All right. I'll give it one more minute. I know people, I wasn't expecting a ton of people to show because I don't know where y'all are, but we had a beautiful day here in the Northeast, and we've needed one pretty bad because we've been under a big dark rain cloud for the better part of the last week, maybe even longer. I feel like we had a little bit of a reprieve on Monday, but not much of one. And then it was just rain again. So today is like 70 degrees and sunny. There's not a cloud in the sky. It's funny. I woke up and I was like so psyched to see the weather. And then I was like, oh, damn, that means nobody's going to come to my sermon today. So, but that's fine. We record, and we actually do have a lot of people who watch the playbacks because they can't make the time. So it's fine. It's one of the few saving graces of having everything be digital now is that you're not bound to to have to be somewhere at a certain time. You can have the luxury of watching whenever you want. So hello, everyone. I am Jessica. I am one of the ministers over here at Fifth Element Free Church. It's nice that we have a few of you here on today. The subject matter of our sermon today is fostering a conscious connection with God, or with the God of our understanding. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, especially so now because it is yesterday marked 4 years of continuous sobriety for me from drugs and alcohol, which, if you knew me when I was drinking and or drugging, is no small accomplishment. I was, pretty much of the hopeless variety for some time. So yesterday was my 4 years clean and sober anniversary, and I credit that my ability to achieve that milestone, not to myself or anything that I've done, but fully to my higher power that I call God. So I have a whole kind of sermon here written down, and a lot of this is just my own story, but there were certain points that I wanted to hit. And it's funny because I was thinking to myself, like, I don't want to treat this like an AA or an NA meeting. I will undoubtedly have a couple of those this coming week where I'll have to share my story, because whenever you have an anniversary, they kind of like shove you up at the front to talk. So I am going to be focusing pretty heavily on the prayer and meditation aspect of the program and what it's done for me and what I believe it can do for absolutely everybody, regardless of whether you have problems with drugs or alcohol. But I will start out with just a little bit of background about how I came to addiction and how I was saved from it. So and I'll keep it brief, because my drugalogue, whatever you want to call it, is a long and disgusting saga that I won't bore you with. But in any case, I was mostly addicted to opiates. But I certainly identify more with as a drug addict, which much to the chagrin of all of my AA people. But I certainly didn't have a healthy relationship with alcohol at all, by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I relied on alcohol pretty heavily whenever I couldn't get the drugs that I needed or wanted. So I was certainly cross addicted, and I identify more as a drug addict because that was definitely my drug of choice. Although I found my way to AA just kind of by happenstance, and it stuck. And so it's, it is what it is. I am firmly of the opinion that it's the same disease. There are people who debate me on that heavily, and that's perfectly fine. We're all in the program to save our lives. And ultimately those semantics don't really matter too terribly much. But based on my, kind of my being in the program for a while and hearing the stories of a lot of my fellow sufferers, I was a pretty late onset. Most people that I come across tell a story where they started in on drugs and alcohol at a very, very young age. Some as young as like 9 or 10, which is just crazy to me. Some in NA, I can think of one gentleman in particular who was diagnosed with ADHD and was given effectively methamphetamines at the age of 6, starting at age 6. So it's, for me, I was about 30 when I really started to notice that I was having some trouble. Prior to that, I was I could drink socially and use drugs socially to the extent that you can do that. Smoking weed, things like that. I really didn't dabble in any type of hard drugs. And in fact, I come from a family where addiction and alcoholism not only run on both sides, but like gallop on both sides. I lost both of my parents to drug overdoses as an adult in both cases. Not that that makes it any easier, but I certainly had the blueprint. But for a long time, like I said, up until about 30, I was so anti, right, that I basically was like, I will never become like my parents. I had such a chip on my shoulder because of the way I grew up. Then I started having my own children. And, for those of you who are parents, you understand that when you have your own kids, life changes dramatically in ways that nobody can possibly prepare you for. And one of the ways that life changed for me was that I started to get a front row seat to the fact that I did not have any healthy coping mechanisms with the overabundance of emotion that I started to feel as a parent. And that's not surprising considering that my parents didn't model any type of healthy behavioral anything for me, right? They certainly never co-regulated with me. They didn't know anything about that stuff. And so I was basically left to fend for myself for most of my life. And then once, I started having kids and I had these like little babies who were dependent on me. And, again, all the emotion that kind of floods you because of that. I had nowhere to turn. And so I turned to drugs and I turned to alcohol, which began about a decade of absolute hell and misery. I didn't realize it right away. It was probably 2 or 3 years into my active addiction before I really came to terms with the fact that I was addicted and that I was in trouble. For the first couple of years or so, I always just assumed that I'd be able to stop whenever I wanted to, and that I didn't want to. I didn't see any reason to. And my life experience up until that point had basically confirmed that would be okay. Like I had never in my life experienced anything that I couldn't will my way through. With a little bit of elbow grease, hard work, determination, like I was able to accomplish just about anything I ever set my mind to. And I had no reason to believe that quitting drugs and alcohol would be any different until I tried. So again, this is probably about 3 or so years into what ultimately turned out to be 10 years of active addiction. And was horrified to find out that I actually couldn't stop and was drinking and drugging against my own will. And that looks like waking up every day and saying, you know what, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to take pills today. And then at some point during the day doing it and having to look yourself in the face and be like, I actually can't stop. It's a horrifying moment that every addict and alcoholic goes through at some point. And it's kind of when the game changes. It's when you really realize that your brain has just been completely hijacked and you're in trouble, right? And you're not going to get out of it alone, and no human power is ever going to be able to get you out of it. And this is why the program is so important, because it turns you to God and it basically has you humble yourself before the God of your understanding and beg him or her or it, whatever you believe, to help remove the obsession, to help get you out. Now, during that 10 years of active addiction, I was in and out of the program. I did, there were several times that I would start going to AA meetings and, they never really helped me all that much. I did therapy. I took harm reduction drugs, which are a very, very controversial topic, within the program. I personally am against them. I understand the whole idea of harm reduction, and I have empathy and sympathy for people who take them. We're talking about things like Suboxone that are meant to kind of like curb the behavioral stuff that comes along with addiction. But ultimately, all they really do is teach you to become dependent on something else that you're now getting from a pharmacy. And so they're just, you're just pumping more money into big pharma, right? It's like they created the problem and then they created the solution. And, they're laughing all the way to the bank while hundreds of thousands of, millions of people are dying. It's awful, right? It is. It's absolutely awful. And so, that's a tangent for another time. But the point being, I tried everything and absolutely nothing kept me sober. And it wasn't until I was introduced to the 12 steps that I actually started to come around and to find lasting sobriety. So the 12 steps are, I kind of jokingly say that the 12 steps are like the best kept secret in AA. And the reason I say it like that is because, like I said, for those 10 years, I was in and out of AA meetings. And every AA meeting I ever went to, they always have the 12, I always call it the 12 steps prominently displayed, like on the wall. Like some of them have these like giant life-size posters. and the 12 traditions as well. But nobody ever talked about them, right? In any of the meetings that I went to. And, in retrospect, I realized I wasn't going to the types of meetings where the steps would necessarily come up, but I was also new and didn't realize that that was even a thing, that there were like different types of meetings. But the few times that I did, kind of say like, what are those things on the wall? I was often met with resistance. Like the people who I would ask would often say like, oh, those are the steps, kind of like dismissively. Or one person I remember actually said, oh, we don't recommend that people get into the steps around here until they have a year clean. Which, again, in retrospect is shocking to me that's even an opinion anywhere, because most people can't get a year clean if they don't do the steps. This alcoholic could not get a year clean without, so that's not the way that it started, right? When the program first started out, the people who started the whole thing were taking people through the steps immediately, because the steps are meant to bring about that spiritual awakening, because the belief within the program is that alcoholism and addiction is not a mental illness at all. It is a spiritual illness. It is a spiritual malady. It is, you are drinking and drugging against your own will, because you are completely disconnected from your higher self. You are completely disconnected from God, whatever that means to you. And so you're just basically floundering around down here on the material plane. And the only way that, that you can find your way back to some form of sanity is by appealing to God and asking for its help. So the steps, when done to the best of your ability, actually are meant to bring about that spiritual awakening. Now, I was raised Catholic, but I only ever went to church as a child, I swear, because my parents wanted to be able to sleep in on Sundays. So they recruited my great aunt, who's she's in her 80s, well into her 80s now, but was always way older than me. And they're my two great aunts actually, and they're like nuns, like they're very, very staunch Catholic older women. And so they were all too happy when my parents were like, yes, take Jessica to church every Sunday. And so I would have to get dressed every Sunday, go sit through mass, go sit through CCD. And I absolutely hated it. The Catholic religion just never spoke to me in any meaningful way. So, whatever, it is what it is. Then I moved into my teens and early 20s and was basically in a period of what I can only call atheism. And then, as I said, when my kids were born, in addition to, turning to drugs and alcohol to cope with the overabundance of emotions, my psychic gifts started to really open up after my children started being born. Now, this is a very common experience that isn't talked about a ton. But if you are a spiritual person and you believe in the spiritual nature of women and their ability to bring souls forth into this world, then you understand that there is something about that process that can and often does crack a woman wide open, literally and figuratively. But it was very much the case that after my children started being born, psychic gifts that had been there but somewhat latent in me, really started to open up to the point where I was convinced that I just had I was like schizophrenic and had a mood disorder and everything else, right? Because my logical brain was really struggling to understand what was going on. This, of course, didn't help, because I would seek to kind of numb out, the voices and the spirits and the things that were trying to come through and talk to me. Again, with drugs and alcohol. So it became a very, very vicious cycle. So finally, in May of 2019, I get my ass to rehab and I'm introduced to the steps for the first time. And the rehab that I went to is absolutely wonderful place. And, they forced me to start doing the steps immediately, not wait a year. Within a month, I was there for a month and they had taken me all the way through steps 1 through 7. And then the rest I have since done on my own. Now, I said before, and I'll say again, I firmly believe that anyone can benefit from the 12 steps. And in fact, we in the program, even, long after we've put down the drink and the drugs, we are encouraged and should continue to do the steps, even as sober people. We do them kind of over and over and over again. Now, for us, it's a matter of life or death. If we don't do the steps and we don't keep ourselves in spiritually fit condition, we will go back to drinking, we will go back to drugs, and we will die. That's just the reality of the situation for some of us, myself included. For those of you who are not, of that ilk, I still firmly believe that you can benefit, because everybody can benefit from a spiritual tune-up. And that, again, is ultimately what the steps are all about. Now, I could spend days, hours, months, right, talking about the 12 steps. I live them, I breathe them. It's they're a huge part of my life. But today, for today's purposes, what I want to talk about is step 11. Now, step 11 is the one that I will arguably has helped me the most. And I'm going to read the text of step 11. It says, "We sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out." Right. So, so it's a long-winded way of saying we pray and we meditate, and we do so regularly because doing so keeps us connected to the God of our understanding. Now, by way of background, for those of you who aren't familiar with the steps 1 through 10 are all about basically surrendering, coming to believe that God is real and that he exists and that he can help us, clearing out all of that sludge that blocks your channel to God, and instilling practices that will help you to keep that channel clear for the duration of your life. Step 11 then teaches you how to nurture that channel, right? So that you never fall victim to any spiritual maladies again. So before we get into the specifics of prayer and meditation, I want to talk about the spirit, the human spirit, as an independent entity that needs to be cared for, because this is something that a lot of people don't realize. A lot of people don't even realize that they have a spirit, let alone that it's something that needs to be taken care of. And again, a lot of you guys know already, and for those of you who don't, I come from an astrology background, right? Astrology is a huge part of my faith. And I understand that, more Christian types find that to be heretical. That's fine. They're entitled to believe whatever they want to, but I will not deny my truth. I firmly believe that if you believe that there's God and you believe that God has created all of this, then you believe that God has created the sky. But if you stop if you then go on to believe that like reading the sky or paying attention to the giant clock that we've been placed in somehow makes you a sinner, okay, right? That doesn't make any sense to me. But again, not trying to knock anybody. But astrology informs a lot of what I do, and it's very informative here as well. So in astrology, we believe that the 4 corners of the human system are spirit, body, mind, and emotion, right? And those are represented in astrology elsewhere by the 4 elements, which are fire, earth, air, water. Now in astrology, right, in the zodiac, that is the actual order. It's fire first, then earth, then air, then water, meaning that the order of importance of each one is very much spirit, then body, then mind, then emotions. Now, we are taught throughout our lives to recognize when we feel emotionally unwell, right? It's not hard to recognize that you're emotionally upset. We know usually when our mental health is suffering, although that one can be a little bit more tricky. But for the vast majority of us, like if you're feeling depressed or anxious, the first couple of times it happens to you, you may not necessarily get it, but over time, there's enough out there about mental health nowadays that most people get it when they're not feeling well mentally. And when your body is breaking down in some way, you're injured, like it, right? What a lot of people don't know is that your spirit can also become sick. And because spirit comes first, right, in that order, and basically supports everything else, it is extremely common for people with spiritual sickness to have issues manifest in the other 3 areas, right? This is one of the reasons that addiction and alcoholism is treated as a mental health disorder. And this is also the reason that treating it as a mental health disorder yields no results, right? I don't know a single person that ever got cured or, went into remission or recovery from their addiction or alcoholism solely by going and seeing a therapist, right? It doesn't, I'm not saying that there aren't people like that who exist. I'm saying I've never met any, and I've met a whole lot of alcoholics and addicts. So, to the extent that they do exist, I believe that that's probably true. They are very much the exception to the rule. So when you treat the spirit, right, when you actually treat the spirit and keep it in fit condition, then magically everything else, right, the body, the emotions, the mind, that it all seems to fall back into place. And if you are spiritually sound and there's an issue with one of the other systems, sorry, Jordan's here, let me just let her in. Then you can kind of be sure that it is actually an issue with one of those systems. You can kind of identify it more readily because there's not so much kind of intermingling, right? So how do you treat the spirit? Well, I would argue that you treat the spirit by keeping your connection to the God of your understanding, right? Keeping it clear through regular prayer and regular meditation. So in shorthand in the program, we refer to prayer as speaking to God, and we refer to meditation as listening for God's response. But there's way more to both prayer and meditation. So for the rest of the time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about prayer generally. I'm going to talk about meditation generally, some of the benefits, what it is, what it looks like, and then we're going to move through a group prayer and a group meditation together. Now, prayer is interesting because it's necessarily somewhat difficult to study prayer scientifically. Meditation lends itself a little bit better to overall scientific study, but there is some psychological research about prayer, and there are some facts about it, right? So some of the facts that I was able to find, that the benefits of prayer include increased sense of calm, peace, and encouragement, improved immune system function, can't beat that, decreased feelings of isolation, fear, and anxiety, and reduced anger and aggression. In one study that was conducted in 2009, two groups of people who were suffering from depression were monitored. One of the groups engaged in group prayer, the other one did not. The first group that engaged in prayer showed significantly lower rates of depression and higher rates of optimism over time. So we're talking about prayer. So like, what is it, right? It's this, I think actually this question is better answered if you ask it as what isn't prayer, right? Because a lot of us think we're praying. Like there were plenty of times that I thought I was praying, but I was not praying effectively. So prayer is not waiting until things are really, really shitty and then begging God to fix them. And I can't tell you how guilty I was of this, right? Every time I had a hangover, please God, take this headache away and I'll never drink again, right? Praying to the porcelain God, like you're puking your guts out, please God, let me get through this and I'll never drink again. In the program, we call these foxhole prayers. I actually have a good friend in the program, an old timer, who always likes to say, God's not a short order cook. You can't just decide that you're going to pray, one day because you need something and magically expect God to give it to you. Rather, fostering that conscious connection through prayer means checking in with God every day and asking very little for yourself, right? We go back to the language of step 11 for this, and this actually confirms it. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out, right? So with regard to us, the only thing that we're supposed to ask God for is direction, right? Please, please, please tell me or show me what is your will for me and help me to, guide me to that path. So how do we pray? In the program, actually in rehab, I was taught to use a 3-column prayer. And this was extremely helpful for me because I resisted prayer fiercely. It wasn't that I didn't believe in God, because at that point I had seen enough. I'd had enough synchronicities. There was enough going on in my life spiritually that I could not deny the existence of God. But I don't know if it was fear or what. I resisted getting down on my knees to pray, right? Like I was just so incredible. It was probably just my Aquarius, right? Like I rebel against things, like just for the sake of rebelling against things. And I finally had a counselor in rehab who sat me down and said, listen, this helped me, try this. And so I took the suggestion and I tried it. And what he showed me was a 3-column prayer. Right. So basically we pray in 3 parts. Column number 1, we pray that God bless others, right? So you lead off by asking God to bless other people around you. That can be your family, that can be your friends, and it can and should be your enemies. Now I'm going to flag this for a second because this one sounds weird. And this one was suggested to me very early on and I balked at this one too. Pray for my enemies? Why the hell? Like pray they get hit by a bus, right? Like why on earth would I pray for my enemies? I have to tell you, I don't know if any of you guys have tried this. If you haven't, I highly suggest it. If there is a person or a situation in your life that is causing you distress, pray for it. Pray for them. And it, you don't have to be like, I want that person, to get all this money, right? Like it doesn't have to be like over the top. It can just be a very simple, like I pray for so-and-so, like please bless them and their families, something very simple. And I will tell you that very soon after you start doing that, if you do it consistently, you will find that you are not bothered by that person anymore. I can speak to this from personal experience several times since getting sober, that this has helped me so incredibly much. And it's not necessarily because you care so much about what happens to the other person, but it brings you that peace, right? And you don't have to go through that crap anymore of like dealing with it. So that's column 1, pray for others, right? Column 2, now is where we pray for ourselves, right? We put others first and now we're going to pray for ourselves. But again, we only asking God to put knowledge of his will for us and the power and grace to carry that out into our hearts or into our knowing. Now, when I first got sober, I would literally ask God, and I'm not kidding, like I use this exact language, like, please God, light my path up like the runway at Logan Airport on a pitch black night, because I was so lost and I felt so misaligned. Just coming out of the fog of 10 years of active addiction and not having any, being scared to death of like, what is the rest of my life going to look like? I have no idea who I am. I have no idea where I'm going. Please, 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 God, I want nothing more than to align with your will for me. I just don't know what it is. And guess what? He did. And he does. He continues to still, like, I have these moments where I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And then, I pray about it. And all of a sudden, like, whoop, there it is, right? A person, a place, a thing, something shows up in my path. And it's just like, oh, okay, thank you, right? And that brings us to column number 3, gratitude, right? Gratitude, 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 thanking God. This is arguably the most important part of prayer. Showing God that you recognize all that he has already given you and that you appreciate all that he has already given you. Cultivating an attitude of gratitude is so incredibly helpful for living a positive and spiritual life. It also invokes the law of attraction. When you are consistently putting out a frequency of gratitude for your abundance, the universe will respond by continuing to give you things to be grateful for. Okay. This is why you meet people who are like super negative and they continue to draw in negativity. It's law of attraction. So even if you are not feeling particularly grateful on any given day, offering up gratitude for things that most people take for granted, right? Like my health, right? But, oh my God, my back doesn't hurt today. I'm grateful for that, right? Really feeling into the gratitude for those little tiny things encourages the universe to be like, oh, let's give her more. Let's give her more. It works. It works. Now let's turn to meditation a little bit. The benefits of meditation are legion, right? But did you know that there's studies that have actually shown that secular meditation is not as effective as spiritual meditation? Now, I don't want to knock secular meditation. By secular meditation, I mean people who meditate using things like self-worth affirmations and the like, right? Now, they're going to see benefits. And again, this is not a knock, but the people who meditate on more spiritual matter, right? Like meditate on the nature of God or the nature of God's love or things like that, they tend to see more benefits than the people who are just sitting there repeating mantras about like how great they are and things like that, right? Let me see here. Benefits. Okay, yeah. So benefits of meditation, like I said, there's tons of them. They include stress reduction, reduced anxiety, emotional stability, enhanced self-awareness, better focus and attention span, more situational awareness, improved sleep, controlled pain. The list goes on and on, right? I can't speak enough about meditation. I'm relatively certain that meditation saves my life on a daily basis. Now, what is meditation? Meditation is the practice of redirecting your thoughts. And it is a practice, right? So please, please, please do not ever expect to master it. I get a lot of people, clients who tell me, like I suggest, there's certain things that I will see in an astrology chart where I will look at a person, I'll be like, you have to meditate, right? Everyone should meditate, just like everyone should do the steps. But certain people, it's really incumbent upon them, right? And these people inevitably will say to me like, well, I try to meditate, but I can't quiet my mind. Duh, right? Like, of course your lower mind isn't meant to be quiet, right? That's the whole reason it exists. Now, and I always say this to people, if you decide that you want to run a marathon, you're going to go buy some shoes and run 26 miles tomorrow, or is it going to take you a little while to actually train and build up to be able to, to accomplish that type of a feat? Meditation is no different. There are going to be days, and I've been meditating almost every day for 4 years now. There are days where I maybe get 15 seconds where my mind is actually quiet, and the whole rest of the time I'm thinking about how I have to food shop and how I'm behind on laundry and my kid has to be here, right? But that's it, right? That's the process. The process is when your brain goes off on that tangent, teaching yourself to recognize that your brain has gone off on that tangent, and then gently bringing it back, right? Releasing the thought, gently bringing your awareness back to your breath or to the mantra that you're repeating or to the music that you're listening to or to the guided spiel that you're listening to, right? Whatever's working for you, whatever gets you to meditate. Over time, as you do this consistently, you start to create space for God to get a word in edgewise with you, right? And the more you can quiet your mind, even if it's just for a moment here and there, the more you allow God's grace to enter in a meaningful way. Julie's here. Your mom, Jordan, your mom's here. Okay. And so, yeah, creating that space to allow God's voice to enter, right? And he won't just show up during meditation either. Where once you've started to practice mindfulness, you will start to hear God, right? Your version of God all over the place. Now, it's going to come in different forms for different people, but I will tell you that for me, it shows up as repeating number sequences, impeccably timed songs coming on the radio, that have special meaning for me. Oftentimes it comes through the voices of other people, right? And it can be someone totally random that you're not even talking to says something that is like exactly what you needed to hear in the moment. This is how God shows up, right? It's absolutely everywhere. Meditation enables all of this information to flow to you. You just need to be able to create the space and then be open to the message in whatever form it shows up. Okay, so we are going to do a group prayer. And I had asked actually earlier on the Facebook group if there were any people who wanted their names specifically mentioned during this group prayer, because there is evidence that praying in a group is actually quite powerful. And so I have a list of some names. If there's anybody else who wants their name added, go ahead and throw it up in the chat now. And then after we do the group prayer, we're going to move into, oh, Jordan, yay, okay. Let me write your name down here. All right. Okay, so I'm not gonna, well, I can't even see most of you, but I'm not gonna make you guys get down on your knees. I will also not get down on my knees for this particular prayer, because of course there is not any requirement that you be on your knees when you pray. However, as I mentioned before, there is something about it, and like I said, I resisted very fiercely, why do I have to get on my knees? If it's God, he can hear me no matter what, right? And that I'm sure I'm such a brat. I was such a brat when I first got sober. It was so ridiculous. I still am, but like that to me, even looking back at it now, I will tell you though that, I had a counselor very unceremoniously be like, just get on your fucking knees, right? And so I did, right? I remember very, very vividly the first time I got on my knees and started praying in rehab, and I cried like a baby. I could barely even talk, like my, words were not coming out. But it was in that moment that like I genuinely felt the presence of God, and I felt the obsession to continue drinking and drugging and basically killing myself be lifted out of me, like in that moment as I was on my knees. And it's never to return, knock wood, like since. So now it's like, okay, it worked. Like, I'm just going to keep getting on my knees, right? So to the extent that you guys pray or you take up any type of prayer habit, from here on out, do it on your knees, right? To the extent that feels comfortable to you, I definitely recommend it. So, okay. And I'm going to use, you guys are going to see that 3-column prayer kind of format. And the prayer that I'm going to say is actually a kind of like a we version of the prayer that I say every day. And so I, changed it a little bit to account for the fact that we're a group. But this is very similar to the prayer that I say every day. So I always start off by greeting God, saying, good morning, God. Thank you for another day of health, life, and sobriety. Please always help us to remember to remain humble in the face of all things that render us powerless, and continue to remind us that we can lean on our faith in your perfect love and strength at all times. Please, God, continue to shower us all with blessings. We ask for special blessings for our families, our friends, and our enemies, that they may continue to walk through this life surrounded in your loving protection always, and that you help us continue to heal and grow so that we may be the best possible versions of ourselves for our loved ones and for humanity. Please bless Nikki, Harami, Chuck, Amy, Scott, and Jordan and their families. Keep them healthy and safe. We pray for knowledge of your will for us and the power and grace to carry it out. Thy will, not ours, be done. And we offer gratitude for our many, many blessings in this life. Thank you for our homes, our health, our families, and their health. Thank you for providing us with abundance and beauty here on the material plane, for our friends and networks, and for our faith that you will continue to see to it that we always have everything we need to survive and thrive here. Amen. All right, now we're going to do a guided meditation, and we are going to see if I can actually get Jordan. I practiced. Jordan usually handles sound for us. Jordan had to be somewhere this morning, and so I had to figure out my own sound, but I'm pretty sure I did. So we're going to see if this works. So I'm going to invite you guys to kind of close your eyes, settle in. You can shut your camera off if you want to. I will probably shut mine off as well, so it doesn't feel like I'm just talking at you. Okay, I'm going to see if I can get the music to work here. Oh, hold on. Is that working? All right. When you're ready, close your eyes. Take a deep breath in through your nose, out through the nose. Always trying to match the length of your inhalation with the length of your exhalation. Breathe deeply and slowly, and try to focus your attention on the space between your eyes, about an inch or so above the bridge of your nose. This is your third eye center, and it's where God's messages are received. Please. Inhale and exhale. You will notice that your thoughts try to wander away from your breath and away from your third eye. That's okay. When you notice that happening, acknowledge the thought you are having, release it, and gently bring your awareness back to your breath and to the center of your forehead. If at any point in this meditation it feels more comfortable to bring your attention to your heart center, please feel free to do that. God speaks freely to our hearts, often places answers there. During this meditation, I will be using the word God to refer to a higher power, whatever that means to you. And if you are not sure what that means to you, great. Whatever God is, it is certainly too big, too powerful, and too complex for any human being to understand. So maybe use this time to explore the possibilities of what that higher power that I'll call God is. Or, if you feel solid in your understanding and conceptualization of God, please feel free to focus your attention on that interpretation. There are no right or wrong answers here. To each person, God is different. Even though we often have a sense of doubt about where we stand vis-a-vis God, we sense that God is an energy, a divine energy, the energy that makes up the stars, the trees, you and me. That is God. That little voice in your heart, that is God. And somehow, you always feel protected, always watched over, even through the darkest of times. There was God, whether I knew it or not. Imagine that you are in this river right now, and every drop is a shower of love that you are receiving from God. Every strike of thunder reminds you of the power of God all around us, within us. When you listen to that little voice in your heart, to God's voice, is it any surprise that when you find that you've avoided a potential disastrous situation, or when you've been led to precisely the right moment at the right time, some might say it's just luck, coincidence. And that's okay, because that's what they feel. You know it was God. Take another deep breath in and exhale it out. Every breath that you breathe in, you feel closer and more connected. Continue to focus on your breath, inviting this warmth and love and grace. God has so much to offer. With every breath, we find more peace and more connection. Imagine you are breathing in the presence of your higher power, as if you are turning on something deep in yourself that already existed. Breathe it in, more connected with every breath. God's love fills you up with every breath. Breathe in deep. Take your time on your exhale. Let God's love surround you and strengthen you. You are a divine expression of the universe. No matter where you are or what you're doing, God loves you. Go into the arms of your higher power. Feel the warmth of its embrace. You are a divine expression of God, a fraction of His infinite existence. Take another deep breath and exhale it out. Let your mind go where it wants to for the next few moments, knowing that God is with you, that He is guiding and protecting you always, that your journey through this life is no accident, that all is unfolding according to His divine plan, and that His universe is always conspiring in your favor. When you're ready, return your breath to its normal pattern and open your eyes. Everybody nice and blissed out now. All right, so that about does it for me. I do hope that, if any of you are interested in learning more about how to incorporate prayer or meditation into your daily lives, I think it's, relatively, it's very easy to do. A lot of us kind of, if you grew up with any type of serious religious instruction, there are a lot of people telling you how to go about doing it. None of that ever worked for me. And so I pretty much forged my own path with suggestions from others. So, if ever, any of us can be of service to you guys in that way, please don't ever hesitate to reach out. As most of you know, we are we're running a nonprofit church over here. So we rely on donations to keep the well-oiled machine running. So if anybody is feeling called to donate to us, Jordan has put the links to do so. We have a PayPal. We also use Liberty Dollar, which is a silver co-op. We don't like big banks all that much, so we try to stay away from them. They are somewhat of a necessary evil, but we do our best to not feed that beast. And for those of you who are around next week, we have Jordan, right? You're next week, Jordan? Jordan's is at the wheel next week. Her sermon, I wrote it down, is Living the Expression of Honor, which sounds very fancy. I don't know if you want to talk about it at all. Just what you're planning. I know you wrote to us.
Some of it's to be determined, but yeah, it's going to be an engaging sermon, so be ready to participate.
Oh, nice.
When you come next week.
All right, I like that.
Yeah.
Interactive. It's like 4D.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, as always, I thank those of you who are here with us today. We really appreciate the fact that you care enough to spend any of your time with us. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Please enjoy this. Hopefully it's beautiful where you are. If not, I'm sorry. But for those of you who are here in the Northeast, get out and enjoy this beautiful weather because we sure as hell deserve it, right? All right. Take good care, everybody. Thank you.